We are missing a couple of people. I expect this problem to show up, but we might as well get started and grab off the forum.
I'm sorry? All this, sure we gotta grab off the middle.
First order of business is approval of minutes from April 9th. Just for the record, say that Lillian Camus is sick and she cannot be here tonight, so Chris has volunteered to take minutes. She doesn't have enough to do. So they would like to make a motion to approve the minutes for April 9th, 2015. Is there a second? Second. All right. Any discussion on the minutes of April 9th? All right, seeing there's no discussion, all those in favor of approving the minutes for April 9th, 2015? Aye. Those opposed? Nobody's opposed. So nice. All right. So next on our agenda is a schedule update. That's Alan Minkus, our project manager.
Got the 11 by 17 here with the purple colors on it. If you take a look at the top, just not a lot has changed. What we're shooting for right now is the June 11th submission of the preferred schematic report, otherwise known as the PSR, to the MSBA. And in order to do that, if you look along the top where the little yellow and red boxes are, we're at April 30th. We'd like to establish a special meeting on the 13th, which is a Wednesday, not a Thursday, to discuss site and mechanical, electrical, and plumbing issues with the committee, just to get your understanding and feedback on that. And then on the 21st of May, which would have been a normal third Thursday of the month, we'll have a draft of the preferred schematic report for everybody to look at, and we'll discuss that so that you have some time to review it before meeting again on June 3rd, again a Wednesday, due to a conflict with something going on with the school on the 4th. And that would actually be the sign-off on the PSR before it goes into the MSBA on the 11th. So if everybody could kind of take a look at those dates and let us know if that works for you. They're right up here. Yeah, right along the top in the yellow and red there. So May 13th, May 21st, and June 3rd.
Okay.
The other thing that changed on the schedule at the very bottom, we talked about the town meeting and the vote for debt exclusion, and the very last lines, 20 and 21 of the Gantt chart. In discussions with Chris, we're looking at having the town meeting, a special town meeting on February 8th, at which time we'll already have MSBA's approval of the schematic design, and we'll know what the project funding agreement is. And then that will be presented at town meeting, and then hold a vote on March 1st, which aligns itself with a primary, I believe it is, Chris?
The presidential primary.
Yeah, presidential primary. So that's a suggestion that we put on the calendar as well there for making this move a little bit quicker. Okay. Any questions on schedule update? Now we can go to DEP update, if I may.
There's a copy of a report put together by Berkshire Design Group. I'll cut to the chase. The news is pretty good. What's out there is what was built is built to plan. Seems to be in good shape. Ken was out there when the DEP and Berkshire Design and their consultant were there on the 24th of April to do the inspection. There are a couple little things they'd like us to take care of, but essentially the next steps would be take care of the groundwater alarm, repair of that. It's actually not at East Meadow, but at the junior senior high school. And just keep in mind the DEP considers both school sites to be one site. So it does affect our project. It is something that we're going to have to take care of.
I signed that PO today.
Oh, you did? Wonderful. Great. Thank you, Ken, for investigating that and getting that underway. When that work is done, Berkshire Design would like to come out and inspect it, verify it, so that when they would submit their report to the DEP, they can say it's been done. Oh, Chris, do you not have a copy?
I don't have one.
Okay. It is what I sent.
Will they pack or something, or this here? Yeah, all right,
Looks like this.
thank you.
So again, it's good news. DEP process will still have to, continue along the way, but it's looking really, really good. We do not have to be a wastewater management director. So,
Good news.
yep.
Great.
Any questions on that? I can try to answer them, or perhaps even Ken could.
All right, should we move on to the options that we were discussing at the last meeting? Was option 5 and option 6. There was an option 5B and an option 6B, but those are just with the sewer treatment plant. Since that seems to be behind us now, we're just calling it, we're looking at options 5A and 6A.
And we've actually even dropped the A's to just
5 and 6.
Yeah, to kind of refer back to the PDP. So I guess what I'd like to do is maybe walk through we have made some modifications to option 5 based on comments we heard last week. Just walk you through those, and then I can flip to the other plan, option 6, the new pre-K through 3 on this site, which hasn't really changed much. But a couple things that have occurred since 3 weeks ago now, I think it was, when we last met. We heard some concerns about the location of music. Originally, we had music and art sort of right here. And I think Alan actually was the one who suggested, you could combine a music room with a stage and connect it to the gym so that you have sort of a multi-functioning room right at the end of the gym. We would recommend retaining your platform in the existing school, so you would have 2 stages. What would separate the music stage room from the gym would be an operable partition, soundproof, so that this could operate as a classroom when gym was in session, and then we could open up the doors and do performances. Yeah, well, I know you like efficiency and multifunctioning, and we thought it was a good idea as well. Some of the other things that have occurred, more sprinkling around of toilet rooms, the stuff you need for support. So toilet rooms, custodial rooms, electrical space. The other thing that we did, which you may not remember from the last plan, but again, we tried to maximize some of the things that we heard in the Frank Locker visioning session about shared spaces between classrooms. And again, it's easier to do it here in the new part of the building than in the existing, but we kind of played that all the way out. So that each of these pairs of classrooms has a shared space between them. And the way that was made to happen was, we take a little bit of square footage from one room and a little bit from the other so that we're not adding square footage. I think those are the main things that have changed since last time. If you...
Is that 5?
This is 5, yeah, at Reno.
Was the OTPT room in between? I don't remember that.
No, oh, you're right, you do have a good
And there
memory.
was
We had just
and there
thin
was a
corridors.
different- Yeah,
Yeah.
and there was a different space up the top, the 2 over from the art room. I can't really tell what that is, but I don't remember it being so open before.
Yeah, well, these areas, again, where we are able to, because of not having bearing walls and columns instead, we did open up. So, yeah, it might not have been the same exact configuration of what was happening, but same concept.
How invasive would these changes to the existing school be to the roof that was just put on a year ago?
Good question. I mean, certainly the carving out of the courtyard is invasive. But again, structurally, apparently, it appears that these are all bearing walls with footings below them, so it's not structurally impossible. It'll depend, I think, a lot on mechanical equipment and need to either, depending on what we do with reuse versus new. I think anything new, we try to put up a new roof, and we're very mindful of the fact that you did just replace that roof a couple years ago, 2013. The other thing we're proposing, and then we can see how it plays out in the cost estimates, is reopening. These were originally skylights. So again, the structural framing for them would be there, but you have a new roof over them. Maybe they were re-roofed over before. So again, that would be an invasion, if you will, as with that. Everything else we would try to minimize. Any questions? And we did put the striping on because I know we've had a lot of questions about the size of the basketball court, and indeed it is high school regulation size, but you'll notice when you put the striping in, there's very little space around. So, you know, it's a give and take. Any questions on the plan? I mean, maybe one thing we could do would be to, I can tell you kind of the sum total result of the changes and the continued development. And again, just to remind you, we're still a very conceptual design here. So we've modified the space summary a bit so that the left side column, we now have a comparison of the PDP submission, so that's what we submitted back in January. The middle three columns are what we're currently proposing, and then on the right side is the MSBA guideline numbers. So again, if you kind of compare to the PDP, you know, we're still kind of in the same range, actually a little less square footage in terms of the core academic spaces. Here, so PDP, where we are now. Yeah, we probably should have said option 5. Pretty close in terms of what we submitted in the PDP, and remembering that we are, you know, a little bit over what the MSBA guidelines are because we are providing 2 pre-K classrooms. But we got more efficient because we are reusing spaces here in the existing building, and they are undersized per MSBA guidelines. Special ed, we've always been above MSBA guidelines. We're staying fairly consistent to what we submitted in the PDP, but again, the special ed requirements are generated by the district.
So that special ed MSBA guidelines is 1 room at 500. We have 2 rooms at 300. That's okay, because it's total.
Well, what'll happen is we'll have to get this approved by DESE, Department of
Elementary and
Elementary,
secondary
secondary
education.
and it is it's almost every district does have more than whatever the MSBA gives you sort of a bare
Right.
minimum as a suggestion.
So all I'm asking is, so they say 1 room at 500. We have 2 rooms at 300. It's total square feet as opposed to the size of the room?
I think it is total square feet in terms of what they might look at. But again, we're trying to give you what you most need.
Mhm.
And what you most need is a lot of smaller rooms for more flexibility. Art and music, pretty much on par with a little larger than what we submitted in January, pretty close, within 200 square feet of the MSBA guidelines. Health and phys ed, right on par. Again, where we're in the new building, it's a little easier to kind of just hit everything on target. Media center, a little larger than what was submitted and what was MSBA guideline recommended, but again, we're taking over an existing space that has an existing size. Dining and food service is where you'll see the biggest difference, and something we talked about the last meeting. The idea would be to retain the existing cafeteria, remodel and expand the kitchen, and that would result in 3 lunch seatings instead of 2, which is, again, an MSBA guideline recommendation. Medical, pretty much on par. Admin gets a little larger than what we submitted in January and what is an MSBA guideline recommendation, mainly because we have scattered throughout the building some teacher planning rooms, which we think will be incredibly beneficial to communication amongst teachers and giving them the ability and space to do what they need to do. Custodial maintenance, again, we tried to flesh it out a little bit more in this plan. It's fairly on par with PDP and the MSBA guidelines. And so the bottom line is the PDP was submitted with a square footage of 76,637. The currently proposed plan is at 72,400 square feet. So we're kind of right in between what the MSBA recommends and what we had originally proposed. But the net difference from the PDP is 1,000, over 4,000 square feet. So that certainly affects the cost.
And some of that was made up in the grossing up factor of the circulation and efficiency of the building.
Right.
It came down because the building was becoming more and more efficient as we designed it further.
Right.
The location of the cafeteria and
Mhm.
the passage from this side
Yep.
to the back,
Mhm.
is it sufficient? Is that the best way to do it, or was it because that's what we had and we have to use the hallway that we had?
Yeah, pretty much. In terms of efficiency, yes, lining up with the existing.
How
makes
wide is
most
that
sense.
hallway then?
Oh, that's probably, don't have a scale with me, it's probably a good 8 to 10 feet,
Okay.
which is typical too, especially in main corridor. And sorry, I never finished, Jen, you had noticed the difference here. We did decide to go ahead and widen the corridors here and provide for some more reading rooms and OTPT, which is nice because then it's also centralized. And again, the goal of kind of spreading out the SPED spaces through the building and not creating a single location for it is certainly something I know you're aware of and want to avoid. Any questions on this?
No gift shop.
It's a fundraising opportunity for this well.
Lord knows we could use it.
And maybe what I'll do is I'll just move this one over. And as Alan mentioned, in a few weeks, we'd like to bring Berkshire Design Group here to talk more in detail about site issues. So I won't go into the site plan too much, but again, just to refresh everyone's memory, here's option 6, new pre-K through 3. Either very lightly touching or not connected to it at all for fear of tripping code issues in the existing scenario. So if there aren't questions on the plans, I think we can look at the cost, the revised
The only thing I would say is the cafeteria size in this version is probably 1,400 square feet more than in this version. Am I calculating that correctly? Because we didn't touch the cafeteria size here at all, right?
We didn't. It's smaller there because you end up with 2.
But the combined 2 is greater than the
Sure,
one here.
sure. Yeah, I think that's something everyone's got to kind of mull over, is the fact that you will have a undersized cafeteria, and the impact of that will be more lunch periods. Yeah.
It's not unusual.
Yeah.
Just do that every month. And it would be more efficient than having two cafeterias that you have to staff, your kitchen, stew, whatever.
Is the cafeteria space in this one, is the platform considered part of that space?
I don't think so. I think we're still kind of calling it out as a separate space. I mean, I guess that's something.
Could be though. It could be
Something
used
you
for
could
that,
think,
right?
yeah, so that's the
And
other
we
thing.
had talked about leveling it and making it part of that space.
Right. I think that's something you have to decide. Is it nice to have that platform as like a sort of secondary performance space? We did
Or do we need
also,
more space in the cafeteria? It's
Right.
smaller than-
right,
Or can you do both?
Or, right,
Can you
or
keep
can
it
we
in
just
both?
use
Yeah.
a second level?
you're going to have the issue of
Said no.
lifts. We're showing lifts here now. Ramps are great, but they take up a lot of space. So in the current proposal, we're showing a lift because you do have to provide handicap access to the platform, and a lift at the new stage / music room.
Okay.
You wanna look at the- I'm sure you want to look at the cost. So the cost, needless to say, in getting smaller, it did positively impact the cost.
Good.
So the Granby share on option 5 now is 15.596 million. Back in early March, it was at 17. Back in the PDP, it was 18, so I can't guarantee we can keep bringing it down like that, but we'll try.
Well, for the start of the discussion, I make a motion that we proceed with option 5.
Second.
Okay. Discussion.
Need to make the choice right now that option 5 is the one
Yep.
that we're going for.
I haven't changed my mind. I think it's the right direction.
A good plan.
You changed your mind?
Haven't.
Oh, okay. I was gonna say.
I know that shocked you, but haven't.
All right, so, any more discussion? Because I will start more discussion.
Yeah. That's a great plan. It does a lot of sense. Just let me repeat what I mentioned before, that from the Finance Committee's point of view, we just have research that we did a few years ago. And what we found then was that the highest that any district had voted to increase their taxes for building for a school was about 6.95%. It was in a very wealthy community that did that. So we don't see any evidence that 10% tax increases, 9% tax increases have worked in other districts. And as of right now, we don't see any plans made by this committee for how they would overcome what at least Finance Committee perceives as a natural barrier. So the way I would frame it, though, is that you got to be very, very sure that you can do something that no other community in Massachusetts has done, because what you're doing is risking MSBA help for Granby probably forever. So someplace along the line, if the only consideration of that is tonight, then I'd kind of like to hear people's opinions of it. If we're actually going to come back and reconsider this at a later date, then they could wait until later.
I have a couple thoughts, John, and that kind of go toward the assumptions about tax increases. One is this, is if we have a tax increase that is, if there's a $100 difference between tax increase for the no renovation and the actual renovation and new addition, is that significant? And more mathematically, is the resistance to the a tax increase linear? Does it increase with every dollar? Does it increase with increments? Really don't have any. We're gonna have, regardless of what we have to seek for a tax increase, it's gonna be, I think we're gonna be in uncharted territory. So when we talk about the prices, you know, if I'm going to pay, let's say I probably wouldn't even have this, but if I had a $400 tax increase as a taxpayer, do I really care that much if it's not a $400, but it's a $500 tax increase? Is that going to make me not vote for the project? So I guess what I'm saying is I agree with you in general that the higher the tax increase goes, the less likely it is that it'll be supported. However, I think that there's some, I guess we have some assumptions to unpack there, or some more specifics to unpack. And I don't disagree with the general idea, but I think when we start looking at it in specifics, we're probably operating in uncharted territory anyway. And I don't know, I mean, it's two factors. You got the resistance to the tax increase, and you got the size of the tax increase, and you know what the shape of that line is, I don't know.
Rephrasing your comment,
Yeah.
is there an absolute threshold that something causes people sit up and say, what? Don't know. I said, oh, we know
Yep.
what has happened in the past. We don't know what other efforts we're considering. There have been some, I haven't taken a look recently at these figures, but there have been a number of towns that have turned down tax increases. It's harder to get information on because it's
Sure.
not really available.
No, I think, I haven't read research recently, but I would say probably within the last 6 months, seen charts about what the percentage of overrides that passed. And it's not really very good overall. The other thing I think though is that every case is different. And how much of a choice, I guess, do we have?
Well, I don't know. I know that the community that passed the 6.95% increase in taxes was about 7 times the per capita income of Granby.
Mm-hmm.
And I think probably the wealthier the community, the less likely that $100 is going to make any difference or be noticed by anybody. The question is that what will the people of Granby think? We have it's not as affluent a crowd. I don't know how the age distribution looks out there compared to
We're old. I think, I don't even think I'm the median.
I know it's early in the process, but what kind of money does the finance committee, what figures will be coming from the municipal stabilization building fund that help build our other buildings that now it's time for the school?
Yeah. As you might well imagine, that's certainly not a finance committee decision.
Right.
It's something that the select board and the town and
Or what could
have to.
be the amount?
As an illustrative amount, at the bottom of the page, I put in what the difference makes of $1 million. Money put in through stabilization funds, that would reduce the other figures. I can tell you this, right now, there is about $4 million in the 3 stabilization funds that's uncommitted. There's a little more than that in them, but we've pre-committed over $500,000 to pay back loans that we've taken out in the last few years. Typically, when we buy capital equipment, we take out a loan for 5 years, and then we pay it back through the stabilization funds. That's how we voted from. That has to be voted at each meeting. The money has to come from someplace. And previous towns meetings, it was said that we'd be paying back those loans from stabilization funds. So that pre-commits over the next 5 years in the neighborhood of $500,000. So with that reduced, right now there's about $4 million in the funds. And we hope to add some at the next town meeting, but it's in that range. So it would seem to me to be highly unlikely that we'd take out more than about $2 million at most, because the other side of it, and finance committee is still working on these kinds of figures to show the town. We're working on showing the town exactly how much more than our income we've been spending over the past 20 years. So it is a judgment call, but it could well be very, very difficult.
What, $2 million would be a nice help towards this.
Sure.
Well,
But
but
there are-
if
I
I'm
would say
calculating, it's
$50.
about a point. It's about a point and a half.
It's
Is that the
at
0.3 maybe? 1.3?
at a 4.75% interest rate, which is ambitious for 30 years. Then it would knock $25 off the other costs that are there, which is 11 cents on the tax rate.
But these are also calculated on 17,135,000.
The big was- yeah.
15,596.
Yeah, and I would say that you could subtract 11 cents on the tax rate or subtract $25 from the tax increase for the other figures, for the other 30-year figures.
So would it make sense that, maybe I'm not reading it right, but, so the difference between, the 5 and 6 are really like $3 million. So could I just say, okay, so if we took off $3 million, that would, is it like a $75 difference? Am I reading that right? in what it's gonna cost
Well,
the people, so.
one way to take a look at it is that the student option 5, the cost to Granby is about 25% more than the option 6. So it's a little more than 25% if you look at the Granby cost figures. So you could take any of the figures where I have 12,306,000, and you could increase all of those figures, the average tax rate increase, the percentage tax rate, you could increase all of them by 25%, and it would give you roughly what it would cost to build the pre-K through 6 building at those various interest rates and for those various amounts of time. These are just illustrative figures.
Can I ask a question, Joe?
Yeah.
This committee, are we going to be conducting our public forums based upon the tax rate increase or upon which design best meets the programmatic needs of the district?
I don't know, we tried that last time, didn't work. Maybe, whatever it is, the finance committee is under an obligation to show the financial figures.
And I'm not arguing that with you,
Yeah.
I'm just saying, but as a school building committee, do we offer a plan that meets the programmatic needs of the district, or one that we think the town can afford?
Well, I think that whatever we offer is going to meet the programmatic needs, right?
That's our charge, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's our charge.
But do you think,
But-
Mark, option 6 will be acceptable by the people saying pre-K through 3 is in a new building, and then they're going to go 4, 5, 6 into a, what is it, 40-year, 50-year-old building?
Well, that's the thing, is, when we look at the uncharted territory, and that's absolutely correct the way you're looking at it, but the fact is that regardless of which scenario we go with, we will be on that uncharted territory if the threshold is about 6.5% that we're looking at. And if we look at some other criteria or some other factors here, one is if we do have some money to take out of stabilization, it's going to probably reduce it by about close to 1.5%. Even if we just go with that 15 million figure right now and do some linear interpolation here, we're getting to about $380, maybe $385. So looking from that perspective, from 310, we're looking at 385 or so. I might be a little off on that one. So the difference is not that much. But going back to what Chris was saying, that difference is not just a numerical difference. It's about buying a lot of time for the town not to have to deal with East Meadow, actually getting 2 schools out of that deal, and us being able to go to the town and say, we don't have to worry about those schools structurally and from a programmatic perspective for a long time. We're basically investing pretty decently in the educational system, which would help some of the problems that we talk about in the process of our strategy for the school system, whether we're going to be able to attract some of the departing students back and attract some school choice into Granby. So I'm hopeful that option 5 is accomplishing all those different objectives. But I do see your point as far as the difference being a few $1 million, and then just when you look at total repayment with the interest rate and everything, it's a little higher than that.
Yeah, let me follow up on that by just a little bit by mentioning that if you push some of those ideas to the limit, then it's clear that in the long run, the best thing for Granby to do is to pay off the school as fast as possible, because the costs over a longer period of time become enormous. So that would say that with 20 years is the lowest that we have down here. You could borrow for 5 years and up, but that would say that in the long run, we'd best if we made this a 20-year loan borrowing, because that pays it off the fastest. It's the least overall money that we can spend, but that puts the tax rates up at 9 plus a quarter of the 11.5%. I think people are going to raise taxes by 11.5%.
Yeah. But by the same token, John, if we go back to the conversation that we were having at the Finance Committee meeting, what Jim was raising from an economics perspective, then there are other factors to consider as well. One is while the school's life actually is more than 30 years. So, his suggestion was, why are we really shortening that period? Because the structural life is much longer than that. And number two, I thought it was interesting because he was looking at, our longevity, all of us, and how long we're going to be here. Chances are most people in this town will not actually be paying this amount that we're talking about all those 30 years. Whether it's because we're not going to be here physically or we're not going to be living in the town, but there is a probably small segment of our town as we speak today that will be here for the entire 30-year duration. So we are actually looking at this passage almost. Some folks starting to invest and others coming back and continuing the investment. So it is actually pretty scary when you look at it and say, hey, every year this is the increase, and we look at it from that perspective. But economics tells us that, chances are we're not going to be, all of us will not be paying for this for the entire duration of that loan.
That's sort of the Long Meadow philosophy. Live in the Long Meadow. As soon as your kids get out of school, get out.
Actually,
I don't think
as a
we should make
former
decisions
school
on
committee
that.
member, Long Meadow, that's not the case. Long Meadow is very responsive to a lot of people who do stay.
I know people who will leave.
I mean, that's true in any community, but it's not.
Long Meadow
The schools are
has
valued by everybody there.
Long Meadow has the highest residential tax rate in the Commonwealth this year.
And there's
Highest in
no
the
industry
Commonwealth.
there.
And I wasn't talking about getting out here, but I may get out of here, altogether in 30 years. So within 30 years. So.
Well, all of those things are things that I think it's our job to try to balance. But it all has to be weighed against what's the immediate impact. It's unlikely that everybody in town is going to be thinking of 30-year time.
And John, even if you look at it, say, more scary, I'm going to be about $500. That's a huge increase.
Well, this is on a house that's valued at $226,000.
But even if you look at that, you're looking at 500 thinking, wow, what a huge increase to my taxes, but that's quarterly broken up. So you're going to see an increase, but it would be quarterly. It's not in one lump sum. And I think sometimes when people look at figures like that, they think it's going to hit them all at once, but it's going to be over the course of the year. So it is broken up.
And is this a conversation about taxes, or is this a conversation about investing in our children?
Yeah.
I'd like to see the elaborate vision.
I can't agree to that. I mean, it'd be great if we could just talk about it, but just as a matter of our kids. But quite honestly, you can't talk about it without spending money.
Right, and I agree with that, but what takes precedence in the conversation?
Well-
Obviously, the tax impact is a part of the conversation, but the number one priority is, are we going to invest in our children or are we not?
Well, the design for the new PK through 3, we don't think is a piece of trash. That's a good design. That's an investment in kids. The question is not whether we're going to invest in the kids. The question is, what's the cost going to be? What's a reasonable cost for now?
I
I
would
guess what-
disagree. I'm sorry, but I feel like if as a town, you want to look at option six as an option, when you are investing in your kids, but it's almost like, I'm going to only invest in you this much because that's just what we can afford right now. And instead of saying, you know what, we really value what we can offer kids. And I think that it isn't a horrible design by any means, but I don't think it actually really services the kids in the way that they should be serviced. And I would be hesitant to, I think if people are going to be coming out and voting for something, and they're coming out and they're saying that I want I am going to agree to have my taxes increased, they're going to want something that's going to be for the kids, not just in pre-K through 3. And that's just my opinion, but
It'll be a drop off.
Right, and if you don't touch the other part of the building, you will have to touch it in some way or other because there are things that need to be repaired in there. So it's pay me now or pay me later.
Well, I
Or
don't,
pay me
you know,
now and get
so-
an SBA, or pay me later and
I
do
don't-
it all ourselves.
I don't think anybody at the table disagrees that that's fabulous design, you're doing a nice job, right? You help squeeze down square footage, and if we asked you to do it again, you probably could, right? But, maybe not, but, I think we all agree that that's the right answer, but the issue does become, at the end of the day, let's not pretend.
Oh, no.
It is gonna be a tax issue, and there are going to be people in town that are gonna be resistant to it, and there are just as many people in town that would say, you know, if we came back with a pre-K through 3, that would say, geez, that doesn't meet our needs either. So we have to be thoughtful around what percentage, and in my mind, I want to build a bigger school, and I think it's the right answer, and that's what I would vote for, but I think it has to come in below 10%. So we have to be thoughtful about when we can bond, how quickly we can bond, how quickly we can grab these lower rates, which we know at some point in the next 6 months they're going to pop. We have to be thoughtful around, you know, is 20 years the right answer? Maybe we can't afford it as a town. Maybe it needs to be 25 or 30, but I have a tough time believing in reality that going to the town with a double-digit tax increase, I just don't see it flying. I really don't. So that's the question, is how do we get this to something less than 10? And I do think it's a matter of some stabilization dollars. It's maybe bonding for 30 years, and maybe a combination.
When it's presented, is it like, this is the percentage tax increase, or is it the actual amount? I mean, and it's all on how you present it, because, I mean, someone said to me, your taxes are going to go up by, 15%. That, to me, it doesn't mean much.
Yeah.
If someone said to me, your taxes are going to go up $331 a year for this building, they're going to go up, add $75, $80 to the cost for this other building, I would say, whoa, between, and I did the 25% out, it was $77 and $90 was the difference between 310 and 361. I did the percentages out. I would say, oh my gosh, I'll pay my $90 extra a year for all of that.
And for double the kids?
Right, like I looked at it, I try to put, and I'm not a taxpayer in town, so I do, I do appreciate though, like what goes into this, and I'm not downplaying the money part, because it is huge, and we don't want to see this fail by any means, but I think when I hear percentages, as a taxpayer myself in my town, that wouldn't mean much to me. But if someone said to me, this amount versus that amount,
But I think,
don't know how we
frankly,
present it.
I think that's a question for John. How
Yeah.
do you present a holistic picture, or is it focused on?
I don't know what your view of the finance committee is, but we think that we try to present as broad a picture as possible. And
that
in
goes back to-
past years, as topics have come up, we've worked and provided figures for both sides of an argument, and for people who are working on both sides of an argument, because we know how to put the figures together. So we generally, and it's why on the sheet that you had there, I have
Yeah.
it both ways. I have both sets of figures.
No,
there.
this is great,
And-
yeah.
And I think the thing, I think you're absolutely correct that if you just say to somebody, would you mind paying an extra $300? You might get an answer, that's okay, but carry that argument out further. Can you do that every year? Can you ask for an extra $300 this year, and then an extra $300 next year, and an extra $300 next year? That's $900 by the time you finish again, and that ignores the base. This $377 or $350 is on a base of $4,153. So I don't know if people, when they get their tax bill, think, gee, I'm sure glad that I didn't object to an extra $300 in taxes. I feel they're saying, what? It's $4,400 that I have to pay on my modest $225,000 house? I think that's what they're going to say. They're not going to think that we have just this little increase. They take a look at the whole taxes. At least I don't know.
Well, from one perspective that I've been involved in a lot of projects like this in many communities, and how it's presented and how it's thought of is important. And I'm going to preface that I'm not going to vote on any of these. As an interim employee who doesn't live in Granby, I don't feel my vote should be there. I think the citizens of Granby have to be the people that vote for this in order for it to have integrity when it goes out there. But one of the things that I've seen a lot of communities do in selling this is to also point out that if it goes up 10%, and for those people who itemize their taxes, the federal government chips in.
Yeah, there's
So
a deduction.
if you're in a 25% tax rate,
Right.
and your
Your net
taxes
taxes still go up 10%. The net that you're paying still goes up 10%. Because you've been deducting in the past, you deduct in the future.
but you're deducting that much more.
Yeah, but the net that you pay still goes up 10%.
Well, it's not
After
net.
taxes, the amount that you pay still goes up 10%.
That's not a net number, though. That's the wrong definition. The tax increase goes up, not the net, not
No,
your net number.
what your net out
You're
of,
getting a tax deduction for your taxes.
you did before. You got.
And you
did
you get a
before.
larger one in the future.
Yes, but it's only for the difference, and the
Oh, I
difference is
understand, right.
reduced by the same tax back up before. I can write those figures out and show you.
So the other thing is, I don't think, you have to itemize, right, to get a,
You have to itemize, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you need earned income, too.
a lot of people
Yeah.
don't.
The other point that you brought up, Mark, at one of the previous meetings that I think has an interesting framework to think about these things is, what would we do if this were our house? In terms of the short-term cost, what we need today, and the value of it down the road. Assuming we were going to be eventually selling our house, but we were going to be living in it for a period of time, or if you're a young family, you're going to build an addition because you've got, kids on the way. If you've got one child and there's a pregnancy, you're going to expect two. So you're going to plan for that as you look at the number of bedrooms and such. And I think the opportunity to do the whole K through 6 piece is a real opportunity, and I applaud the work to get it down to a number that close. I didn't think this discussion would be happening when the numbers were too far apart. So I really applaud the architects and everyone for doing that. But I think if this were our own home, it would be a simple decision.
And I understand
the
the
value in the long term.
I understand the tax increase and all that, but I think it'd be even more foolish of us to spend just over $12 million for a new school that's only going to have really a couple hundred students in it. If you look at the enrollment trends, it doesn't make sense to spend $12-something for 220 kids. It just doesn't make sense. It's not like we can say we're going to take care of the next school in 2 years, because we know that's not going to happen. This is our chance, and I think we just have to put all our eggs in the basket and do our selling factor and hope for the best.
Well, actually, that's
It's up
probably
to
a
the
good
voters,
point,
I know,
because
but I think it's true.
the cost per student would go down with the larger school.
Right.
So, that could be.
Right.
So really,
Another way to slow down.
it does come down to what story gets told, what sort of context gets told, because it could be very specific, right, which is this, or it could be, here's some other factors that come into play.
And Joe,
Which all of it has to be presented, I'm sorry,
Yeah, no, no,
all
yeah,
of that.
I agree.
Because, yeah.
it seems to me that, the percent tax increase will actually go below 10% regardless, based on the new figures that we got right now, 15.5 million versus 17.1. So it will go down there, and we have an opportunity to decrease it even more if we do put some additional funds in there. But aside from that, looking from a financial perspective, and whatever we might have to bring to the town in the future, this is what I'm thinking. We have a school that probably within about 15 years or so is going to be in the same situation as this school. Let's say we do very well, it's 20 years. Still, it's going to be within the duration of this loan. So before we will have paid this amount, we will have to go back to the town at a time when the cost probably will be higher. There might not be any MSBA. We don't know what our opportunities are going to be. So we're going to make another case to a town that is already paying $300+ extra per year to add another override, or say, hey, you know what, we can't really have this second school. East Meadow is gone. That's why I'm thinking that investing to have this peace of mind and this investment for the children for a pretty long term makes sense, and it takes our mind away from these two schools, and we can focus on other things that we need to focus on in this town.
And the argument, though, applies to the whole town.
Right.
Unless this committee takes the position that it's only school building that makes any difference in this town, then you got to ask yourself about all the other capital needs of the town. And everything you said applies to any other major capital need that shows up in the town.
That is true, but the difference, I think, the difference between investments in school infrastructure and any other infrastructure. Many research shows that when you invest in school infrastructure, your property values actually go up, or when you invest, at least they do not go down. And if we do not do that, my fear is that even the numbers that we are showing here as our median value for our homes will not be there, because if we don't have some presentable schools, or even maintainable schools, because we can't really do anything with those buildings after a little while, then our properties will not be worth whatever they are worth today, and that is
It'd be
actually
very hard to
overall
sell.
town argument too.
Right. But when we're selling this project, that's certainly something that we'll talk about, how having a good school system increases our property value, attracts families to buy in Granby. And we're really challenged right now with that. There's not too many houses being sold in Granby right now because it doesn't look like a real nice place to live.
And
with
we
these schools
saw
the way
in
they
here
are.
some realtors. We got at least one example of that. I don't know why. I don't know. It's because they don't want to put their argument in favor of Granby school systems. They're actually putting McDuffie in their real estate ads, and they say, beautiful town of Granby that has the great school of McDuffie, and there's no mention of Granby public schools. So maybe we have an opportunity to even change that and, attract some more people who
And
who
McDuffie
want to
doesn't
come to
have
this town.
elementary at this point, right? Right, 6 and up.
I'm going to continue to play the devil's advocate. I got to say, I can argue honestly in favor of both things. So I'm not, but this idea that we have to renovate East Meadow because we have to invest in our kids and all this kind of stuff neglects the fact that sitting right next door to these two buildings is a building that needs a hell of a lot of investment that we're still not going to have money for. And if I'm the taxpayer who is spending, I don't know, X amount of money to send my kids to McDuffie, I may not want to increase my taxes, which my house might be worth more than, and that's about the average, that's about the price of my house. But if my house were larger, or, and basically worth more money, I would say, what do I want to do that for? So I don't really buy the investing in our children argument, because, the investment stops when the kids leave East Meadow.
So what are we investing in then? I mean, what is the purpose of this whole?
We're investing in a single building to replace this one, which will be a better school than the kids are operating in now. I don't think that spending money on a school that will need work, just like the high school will need work. I think there's a fallacy in there somewhere, I guess.
Well, I'm going to answer a couple of questions. First question about John. Oh, second question, 30 years. I won't be here then, I'll be 90, so you guys are on your own.
You can
I'll be
prepay-
there with you.
Yeah.
You can prepay your taxes.
Yeah, I'll be here for 30 years. But John brought
I'll
up
be
a point.
99, I'll remember that.
John brought up a good point in his conversation here about taxes and money, I can and all that. But he mentioned that if we don't do this, there won't be another MSBA. And I think that's probably more critical in looking at doing both sections of this building. We only going to have one opportunity to do this. Do we want to do our opportunity only at 200 students, or do we want to do it so that we take care of 2/3 of our schools and all of our elementary population? We have to look at it that way. I think it is an investment in the students. We're buying air conditioners and heating pumps and all that, but it is investment in the kids. We've all been to these schools. Well, I haven't, but everyone in my family has. And I think it's an investment in them. I think we have to look at, maybe it's a gamble. It's probably a bigger gamble than the smaller building. But I think we have to take that gamble at this point, because MSBA is there now. I'm not even too sure it's going to be there in 5 years. There's a lot of turmoil going on with taxpayer money from everybody, that I think we need to take this opportunity.
As
And the
far as-
other thing
Go
that
ahead.
was brought up, the question here, that are people going to criticize this as a renovated building? Well, the answer should be no, because I know what this building's going to look like inside. I'm familiar with these architects' work. Yeah, the outside's gonna have the same color brick, but when you walk in this building, they're both gonna look like new buildings, because we're investing in this entire building. So I think we need to, I've been saying it from day one, we need to go with 5, we need to go all the way. And I appreciate what John is saying, and I'm not looking forward to paying the higher taxes. And, I have nothing to gain, I don't have a student in the school, all I'm gonna get out of this is paying more taxes. But I'm prepared to do that, because I think it's the right thing to do.
As far as making predictions about the MSBA goes, I gotta say, the world stops if the state stops being involved in building schools or renovating schools, period.
Well, they didn't stop before, they put a moratorium on it for 7
Well, yeah, I
years.
understand that, but that was a moratorium we were caught up in, as a matter of fact. But if they do away with state-supported schools, there's just not gonna be no schools built. Nobody can afford to do it on their own. So I don't think that's gonna happen. That's part of the problem we're seeing with just regular school spending today, is the state is kind of squeezing us, and we couldn't do that on our own. So I'm not, all kinds of things going on in the government right now, a lot of moving parts. There's a ballot measure that's most likely going to fail to change the tax structure, income tax structure. But it can't really, I think it's fruitless to try and predict what's going to happen politically at the state level.
One factor I'd like you to remember is that an addition remodel gains you almost 2.5% more reimbursement from the state than the pre-K through 3 building would.
Can I ask, no, I know these estimates are just estimates, right? But you guys do a lot of buildings, right? And you guys are smart enough to know that the estimates you're putting on paper, you don't want to underquote, right?
Correct.
Can you give me a historical sense, based on the buildings that you've probably put up in the last 5 years and you've built? Generally speaking, is there a delta, an overage? Is it 2%, is it 5%, is it 10%? Just so we have a sense. And it's not a commitment or it's not a guarantee, but I just want to know, is this total cost really, whatever the number is, 40 million or 35 million, or is it less 10%?
I could probably answer that better. You can tell me when the feds are going to increase interest rates and when the economy's going to kick into full high gear, and that it's going to become a seller's market, a buyer's market instead of a seller's market, or vice versa. There's so many factors.
I just didn't know, based on historical buildings, like the last several buildings, did you come in under generally, or is it?
They're coming in under. They're generally coming in under, but you don't want to go out to the town with not enough money and have to go back and say we're short.
Right.
You'd rather say.
So I also, following up on that one, I also see that we use the 57% reimbursement rate here. There was a base, as far as I recall, and there was some conversation that it was likely for that rate to go up. So not to put you on the spot, but what would be a reasonable increase to expect on that front? And coupled with that, as we go to the town, since you mentioned that we don't want to really go to the town with something that is completely underestimated, are we going to go to the town with that final percentage figure that we get, or are we going to go with 57%? Final, right?
You have a reimbursement rate right now of 57.11%. There are additional points you get for various items. I think we talked about this a few meetings back, that right now with this additional remodel, it's anticipated that the reimbursement rate with the incentives from the MSBA would be 62.89%. However, there are so many components of the building project that are not eligible. They only allow for 8% of the site work to be eligible. There's all these factors that they play into that go into the building that they're going to keep pulling back on that reimbursement rate. The percentage stays the same, but the components of what they'll multiply that times diminish. So at this point in time, what we're saying is let's figure on 57% as being, a good number to keep in the back of our mind, and anything above that is gravy, for lack of a better term.
But remember, to answer your question, when we did the last project, I believe our base point was 59.6%. When we went through the vetting process, that percentage went up to about 63%.
64 or so.
Yeah. So what did we get? 4%, 3 to 4%. I would use that probably as going to be the same thing for this. But like Carolyn says, there'll be some things that'll be borne completely by the town. So that percentage won't be 63, won't be 50 or 62 or whatever. It'll really drop down to it could even be 59% by the time you're done. It's just, you just don't know until you go through the full vetting process to know.
When you do a renovation, imagine periodically you run into things which you knew were possible, but you didn't really expect to be there.
Right.
Does the MSBA pay their share of costs for unexpected things that happen in renovations?
Yeah, within the budget, there are contingencies for construction contingencies and owner's contingencies for soft costs and for actual construction costs. And they evaluate each and every one of those and tell you what they're going to participate in those, and what they find. If it's things like asbestos tile removal, that they say is something that you probably should have been taking care of over the last 20, 30 years as part of your normal maintenance, they're not going to take care of it. But if it's something that you discover that was unanticipated, that would have been reimbursable if it had been in the architect's documents, they'll take care of it within your reimbursement rate.
Something hidden in the walls that you hadn't known about?
Yes.
They
Yeah.
would take,
A complete unknown that you're not expecting, that is totally,
Right.
right. But if it's something that's just deferred maintenance, that should have been taken care of, they're going to say you should have been taking care of this.
But the contingency isn't a bottomless pot of money. I think MSBA only allows a certain percent
Right.
to be put into contingency of the total project cost.
That's right. And what they'll participate in is 2% of that. And so it's all within the budget numbers that we're driving. But as you look at the numbers we're showing you, those aren't construction costs, those are project costs. Those have all your soft costs, all your contingencies, all your, everything that we can possibly think of, furniture, fixtures, and equipment for all the students, everything that you can possibly think of for this project from start to finish is included in that number. So, and that's the next step that we do after the first schematic report, is when we do schematic design, we actually go out to a real live estimator that actually does nothing but estimate these projects, and they go through it like they would, like a contractor would, and they come back to us and give us those numbers, and we put together what's called a 3011 form with the MSBA that delineates every line item of that budget, whether it be my cost, the architect's cost, the construction values, the contingencies, the furniture, fixtures, and equipment. It delineates every single line item. So, and that's what you take, that 3011 number that the MSBA votes on at the January meeting we're talking about, and writes you a project funding agreement and says, okay, we're committing this many dollars, and we're committing this percentage of reimbursement to you for that many dollars. And that's what you take to the town and tell the town, okay, here's the grant that we're getting from MSBA, here's what we're asking you to vote on. And then we can take the tax impact and say, okay, if the average, and I imagine the average value of the properties in Granby is $226,000, if that's the number you put in there, and that the tax impact on a $226,000 house is X number of dollars extra per year, and then the people that are higher than that or lower than that can do their own math maybe.
One reason there's another project going on right now, a sewer project, and I can't tell you, a number of people have come and asked me what I know about it, and Finance Committee knows about it, and told them next to nothing. But there are people who have no idea what they're going to have to pay. And so we don't like that to happen to voters, to have no idea what it is. So that's why we try to give a lot of information out in a lot of different ways. But it's very good to know that that some of the things that you hear about in refurbishing a school, in fact, we wouldn't have to bear all that ourselves.
The budget you're going to get, I can tell you, is going to come in less than that budget, or on that budget. We're not going to take you down the path of saying oops to you. It's just not the way any of us do business. It's not to your benefit.
Are we ready for a vote, or do we have?
I'm ready.
Move the question.
I'm ready.
Okay. All those in favor of, what do we call this?
Option five.
Option 5. Raise your hands. All those opposed? Something to 2.
Any abstentions?
All right.
Tom abstained.
All right. And I will say, just for the record, that
Are we having discussion also? Is this part of it, or?
I'm just going to say, not justify my vote, I can explain it. I could vote it, I could have flipped a coin on this one, because quite honestly, I have no way of deciding which is more. I can't honestly say one is better than the other. They both have advantages. And I could have easily voted the other way. And I have no problem making the argument, or I'm honestly making the argument for the ad reno. But I don't know. I'm
Well,
still conservative in that regard.
This middle school has served us, this town, for 50 years. I think it deserves to be rewarded with some more little fix-up to serve us another 50 years.
Well, with luck
Yep.
and hard work, it will.
Well, I think we
So,
can do it, though.
Can I ask, because, I mean, one of the concerns that I do have is that we have an important member of our committee that is not in favor of this. And I just don't, is there anything, John, that we could talk about as a committee that might get you or your finance committee to a place where you could, endorse this? Or,
Well, first, before you proceed too far along that line, as I understand the vote that we just took, if I may rephrase the vote was, should we do option 5 or should we do option 6? And I voted for option 6 as opposed to option 5. There are lots of choices which everyone has to make at different points in their life, and they make their choices. It doesn't mean that they're opposed to the thing that they didn't vote for.
yeah,
Okay?
and I'm just out, I guess the question is, you're saying you're not opposed to 5,
Right.
right? Okay, that's good.
So we
I
help
just-
us sell it to the
I just
town
didn't,
though.
I just didn't know if there was, if there's, I heard your comments earlier, and I know what the big issues are. I just didn't know if there was anything that we could talk about as a committee that would inch you closer to.
Well, as I mentioned before, there are a couple of things. One is that tax increases of the size just haven't happened. And the second is that successful tax increases have involved very active efforts, one-on-one contact with citizens by the people who are proposing the project. Neither of those things happened in the last time we went to the school. And I think if they don't happen this time, it's going to be a very difficult time.
So who would do that?
We do.
As a committee.
As we don't, this is where another part where the thing got screwed up last time. It would be fine for citizens to, create a support group like last time. In fact, last time, the school building committee basically refused to talk about it because they thought it was against the rules. But it's our job to inform the public, and I'm not taking issue with Andrea, but I want to take issue with the word sell, which we all use because there isn't really a good one. And I don't think Andrea meant like sell as I'm just about to talk about it. But
Born salesman.
no, we all use that word like we don't have a better word. But our job is to advocate for the project because we believe that we made the best decision. And we made the best decision as a committee. It doesn't mean that everybody had to vote the same way.
Right, I understand, yeah.
And that's our job, to reach out to people and explain things. I don't personally believe in twisting people's arms, but I want to make sure that people have reasons. They know the reasons to vote for the school, and they have the information to vote for the school. In the end, it's going to be up to them, but we own the information, and we own the reasoning, and we need to address their concerns and counter arguments. And that is our job. And it's our job to reach out and publicize and advocate and promote this project. So.
That's a huge, I mean, it's a huge undertaking, regardless of whether we were to go with option 6 or option 5. And
Yes.
we all have to understand what
Right.
is involved in that. It is a Herculean task.
And it involves a lot of planning and also clear organization on our part to make sure that everybody's on the same page with the information and making sure that we have, I mean, we've had some great discussions, but to actually then have them in writing, have them concretely in front of us so we all project it the same way.
So some of the first steps we take is as soon as we can start developing this plan for the PSR is we want to have a public session, that we want to do a PowerPoint presentation open to the public where we're going to explain the schedule and the process, and we're going to show them the plans and show them how we got to this decision of the 7 solutions and boiled it down to, option 5. And you're going to get a lot of comments back from the public, and you listen. And you listen very carefully, and that way you see if we can massage it a little bit to help make it better even, and answer their questions.
The challenge in this town, and maybe it's like that in other towns, is those sessions are not well attended. So we may put a lot of effort into it, and we need to do it,
Right.
but we'll likely get 19 people. So then it becomes the task of, it's a different type of organizational structure and outreach
Or
that
do
is
you-
much more personal.
And I know Alan may not be totally in favor of this, but do you piggyback on something else that's drawing a crowd to begin with, like on May 14th, when there is the Arts Night thing, and you get kids who are going to perform in a concert, kids are going to display their artwork, and if parents come to something, it's something that kids are in. And are we available somewhere in proximity to that event happening to be able to share information?
Well, I will tell you, and I'm speaking from knowledge because I did a lot of this ground root stuff, it's putting together a story and flyers and stuffing flyers and mailing and it's hosting people at your house, and that's the stuff that, when I say a Herculean effort, that's what it takes.
And I think,
And if we're going to be the committee, if we're going to be a group that does that, then we need to understand,
we would be,
regardless of whether it's option 6 or 5, it's going to take that kind of effort.
we would be
that kind of
negligent
commitment.
to not do that. And we've already taken some steps, positive steps in the direction, and Joe and I talked quite a bit, and I think Joe is enthusiastic about what you're saying, so, is bring together our elected officials. And we've had successful meetings here, actually, we've gotten good feedback as a school building committee. We also met as a group on Monday, which was...
It was okay. It wasn't. It was.
We actually got things out of it. That's how I look at it, not rather than, was it perfect, but there was some go around, let's put it that way. But, I think that is something that wasn't done before that we can do this time. One of the things I really think in terms of, this is just purely reaching out to people, is to send out invitations, instead of sending just a press release, send out invitations to 30 people in town, inviting them specifically by name, person, to the information session. And the other thing that happened last time was nobody's really talking about school and why we were selecting it. Everybody's trying to explain what the project was last time and trying to figure out how much it cost. And it was just, we had the MSBA coming in, and that was terrible. It was useless.
Well, the problem was nobody knew what they were voting on.
Yep.
They had so many options out there. We've eliminated that right here. You have one option.
So,
People are going to know what they're addressing.
and the first question from an informing point of view is the one I would answer, and I think everybody needs to be able to answer and address first is why this rather than the cheaper one. And because I was writing things down, when Jim said we take care of 2/3 of schools, I already written that down, so we're on the same page. I mean, that really kind of, I'm not talking rhetorically, that's a big advantage. I mean, we're not taking care of, half our student body necessarily, but we are taking care of 2/3 of the school. We get a higher reimbursement rate.
Actually, I'm
It
taking
is
care of half the
half
student
the
body.
school. It is.
It is
Yeah.
half the
It
student
is,
body.
yes.
No, but I remember we're not
Grades.
taking half the other half. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, yeah, the
But
opposite.
That's what I meant, even if it's not what I said. But I would address that right away. Put that thing to bed, the fact that, we're not doing we're doing the more expensive one because it makes the most sense. As Tom said, like talking about, what would you do if it were your house? And, not all these arguments are equally persuasive or of equal weight, but the cumulative effect, and people need to understand the reasons more so than, they'll look at the dollars and stuff, let them play around with the dollars for a while. They'll be messing with that, but, and they won't be going to the polls without knowing pretty much what their tax increase is gonna be. But focus on the reasons that we made this decision over the other decision. Everybody knows this building needs to be, if not demolished, it needs to be not used as a school anymore. I mean, we'll have 100 parents from whose kids go to school here, getting up and saying, well, this pipe burst in my kid's room, the heater crashed, all this kind of stuff. And so that's gonna happen. People understand we need to do something about this school. People are gonna be concerned about why are we spending more money? It's gonna cost more money. And we need to be sure that people understand the reason for our decisions, because those reasons are legitimate. Those were sensible. It wasn't something that we just said, hey, let's spend as much money as we can. And this was the problem with the project last time. People called it the Taj Mahal because it was supposed to address all 3 schools. And it was just really, we got caught in the moratorium with the MSBA. And it was disastrous in so many ways. But the great thing about that, the silver lining, if you call it, is the fact that we've learned from, the mishaps of the last project.
Mark, at the very beginning of this whole process, we talked about creating a subcommittee for outreach, public education. Do we want to form that committee now? And that committee works on the salient points to be presented at all our various options, so that the full committee is all in sync with what we're going to be talking about?
So,
I think that's our job. Once we select, in my mind is, I think once you select the school, I think our job becomes working at, because I think it's going to be all hands on deck, I really do. So I think a subcommittee can start the work.
But they build the skeleton.
Yeah, absolutely.
The
Right, the
whole
structure
community
and the
flushes
idea.
out.
Yeah.
Because,
That could
we
be
can't
a
get 13 people
screencast that's
together.
put on
Right.
community TV.
can that be a
And you need
motion?
your top.
Yes, I'll make that motion.
What Mark was saying.
Do you have a second for that motion?
Second.
All right, those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
Who would like to volunteer to be on the committee?
I don't have anything else to do with my time.
I'm in.
Okay?
All in favor, sit there quietly.
Jim, you want?
It's your building, it's your hand up.
And Andrea, and me.
I'll do
Put his
that.
hand up.
And Jim.
Jim's pressuring me over here.
You got it, Jim squared.
Twisting arms.
Jim squared.
John, join us, we'll have fun.
Okay.
I'll buy coffee and brownies.
I would say
Every
it was-
meeting, I promise.
I'll do it, I'll do
You
it.
don't have anything to do
Promise
with
I'll
your
buy
job.
brownies and
All right.
coffee. Join us.
Well,
Forget this.
Oh, that's one thing we can't have a quorum. How many people in a quorum?
that's
Well,
right
that's
now,
right.
you're 2, 4, 5, 6, so I guess. maybe.
All right, we can't have any more than, we can only have, I don't think we really want to have public meetings. I suppose it wouldn't hurt if we had public.
Well, you can invite the camera.
Yeah.
Alan, when do you think this plan's going to be ready for this next stage?
Well, that's what we got this decision to move forward on this now. The PSR goes in, but they're gonna do some more work here. And
We'll be back on this schedule that you handed out?
We are on that schedule.
we are on
I mean,
that,
We're on it.
we're on that schedule.
Well, I guess what I'm trying to get is, when is there going to be a plan that we're going to know what's out there before we start talking to anybody? Is it prior to these dates that you issued, or do we stick with the schedule on the calendar?
June 3rd will be the day that I think he was looking at having the draft ready for us.
Well, that's the PSR, that's a little bit, that's a little bit of polishing up of what you're looking at here. The architect has to do elevations, they have to do some perspectives, there's more design that goes into it before you really have something that it's digestible by the public, if you will, that they can see and make sense of. You don't want to get it out there too early with what I call bubble diagrams.
So it's a fall operation when you're going to see that type of drawings.
Usually you start getting the information out there, but in the fall, they're going to start working on schematics, and then we're going to have nicer plans, nicer elevations, nicer perspectives that are good eye wash, if you will, that can sell the project.
I don't mind meeting with the public, but we got to get beyond this stage so that people better understand what we're looking at.
In the fall, there's a lot of opportunities at the schools, open houses, parents' nights, PTO stuff. And matter of fact, speaking of the subcommittee, are we going to invite other passionate citizens onto this committee to help? So it's just going to be us?
No, this is a subcommittee.
Okay.
If there are interested people, we can definitely encourage them to, you know, do their own group and be boosters.
Do their own thing?
But this is a
Okay.
subcommittee of
All right. Just wondering.
So we are gonna need, we are gonna need some money. And I don't know what the protocol and what the legalities are, because there's mailings that need to take place. All right, so here's the question. Are there any funds available in town that we can tap into?
We have money in our appropriation, there was money left for this.
we can be,
Can we check with council?
we can be informed with it. There's no problem with it.
As long as you don't take a position.
So if we're just putting
If
together
you're not
flyers-
trying to sell it, if it's out there just as a sales document or a complete advocacy, if it's all informational, then you can do it. Because if you're just putting the information out there, this is what the project is, this is what the tax rate impact.
Well, you can say these are the reasons the committee decided, we've all discussed it in the public record. And the other thing is you can, as guidelines, we can use other schools, other towns that have used, the same kind of stuff. Just remember, I don't know if it was last year, I was looking at Long Meadow and East Hampton, and how they, like, managed.
You'll have a little more.
And I think, you know, quick Google on that.
Prior to having these meetings in the fall, are we going to have a meeting that we keep postponing of inviting the town officials in to let them know where we are before school adjourns for this year? Joe?
The one we postponed.
Yes.
We should?
Well, I think it's open, I think we should talk about it.
We're just having a quick sidebar here that one thing that's going to go into the MSBA is, now that we have a first schematic solution, is that we do send it out to one estimator, and that goes in on June 11th. But it goes to the Facilities Assessment Subcommittee of the MSBA, who, you know, evaluate it and tell you that they think it's the best option for their grant money. And that we're getting an answer back on and a board meeting vote on July 29th. So it'd almost be a little too early to go out to the public with anything that we don't know is going to be blessed by the MSBA until say August 1st. You know, we can tell them, we can have meetings to tell them what we've done to take 7 solutions and make a decision toward one solution that went into the MSBA, but the real, you know, meat on the bone isn't going to, you know, come until August 1st when we can start answering hard questions.
So do we want to wait until September when we talk about it?
No.
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 Proceed.
No, not to the town,
Okay.
not to the department heads, I think.
Either mid-June or mid-July, we have to have that.
July is going to be killed on vacation.
But I'm just saying,
Yeah.
mid-June or mid-July.
It feels like probably June would probably be the time to try and pull this off.
Right.
We could have a booth at Charter Days.
Is there a
That's where I
date
had my
that
head.
works best? And actually, we should decide, is it a town leadership meeting similar to what we did here before? In my mind, that's what it is, and we're filming it as opposed to,
Yep.
Yeah, I think it is.
it's still open, it would still be filmed and so forth, but it's
Yeah.
really.
But we're
designed-
inviting the town officials
Yeah.
like
I
last time.
think it is.
Is there a date that works best in June?
Well, town meeting is June 15th. Graduation comes up.
Before that.
Does that become is that a problem for, I mean, it's not a problem for probably any of us. I don't know if that becomes a problem in terms of attendance or everything.
What's the third
I'm gonna be
Thursday
on a
in June
business
look
trip
like?
on June 15th.
Good
So
belief.
I won't be here.
I think it's just the town officials that we have.
Right, that's all I'm
Won't be
saying.
here
Yeah,
14th.
that- I don't.
Police chief, fire chief.
I think it's better to do it
planning.
before school ends than
Yeah, I
after.
agree.
Most
Yeah.
people still around, I guess.
You're talking the
Well, school
second,
ends what, 23rd,
22nd?
When is our next, when is the meeting on, what's the date?
We haven't
of
set
that?
a date yet.
No, there are some dates that I thought.
Yeah, we just
13th or the
said in
3rd.
May.
Can we do it
Our
for
next,
13th?
our next meeting is the 13th of May.
No, in June, what, don't we?
No, our meeting in June is June 3rd.
May 13th. Get it out.
Can we do it June 3rd?
Yes.
We have a meeting that night anyways.
Fine with me. June 3rd.
Perfect.
Okay, that's actually pretty ideal, because you'll see the draft on the 21st of May. It's actually just officially being signed off on June 3rd to go in on the 11th, so it should be a quick meeting that we can then transition into.
Good, so June 3rd, we'll invite town leaders.
So let me just anticipate this question. On June 3rd, someone from the audience raises their hand and says, did you solicit any town input to come to your decision?
I'll give the same answer I gave to Jim Hartley on Monday. No,
Right.
because it's really
Not
not.
fair. We're in charge as a committee to make those decisions.
And the MSBA hasn't set up the process that way. It starts out with talking to the schools about what is, the educational expectations and accommodations and stuff are, LPM suggested this was kind of the way it went, but there are really very few, if any, contributions the public could make to the design. We haven't designed the building either.
No, I know that, but I guess I think.
Which I would say that too. So I would say there was,
There are a couple of things. One is that as a committee, we're charged with responsibility, and only the committee is charged with responsibility to come up with the solution to the problem. Secondly, every meeting is an open meeting. Everyone on this committee is known to many, many people in the community. The meetings are on TV as well as people who come. Everyone in town has had an opportunity, if they wanted, to speak to any individual on the committee and tell them any opinions that they have. And then that gets factored on into the decision of the committee members. So there has been no formal role for people, and there can't be a formal role for people, but there's been a tremendous amount of informal opportunity, and I don't know that a few people have talked to me, I don't know about the rest of you.
Yeah.
Just a few, and taking in what they've said. But, there has been enough opportunity for anybody to express their opinion and influence what's going on.
yeah, and there's just really not much that the public can influence at this stage.
Yeah, and I think people, as they're watching on TV, this has been a fairly simple process. And I don't know how anyone would argue very much with how this process has worked. It's been quick, easy, very well organized, so. I wouldn't worry.
Not easy.
Not easy.
Not difficult.
You didn't have one single arm wrestling.
Yeah.
Didn't have 15 options to
June
choose.
3rd meeting is here at 6:30?
No,
Um,
no, we're gonna suggest a change of venue. Now that we're dealing with East Meadowside, proposal is to move these meetings to East Meadow. We met here so people could see
Yeah, okay.
what this
That's a good
building
idea.
looked like. Now that we're looking at East Meadow, we should go to East Meadow and see what that building looks like and start presenting that.
All right, and are we meeting at 6:30, or are we gonna meet earlier?
I thought we meet as a committee at 6:30 and then the public comes at 7.
All right, okay, good.
So, does the committee have a problem moving our meetings from now on to East Meadow?
Nope. And everybody's okay with the other days of May 13th and
Yeah.
May 21st?
So just to be clear, the town leadership meeting is going to start, it will go from 6 to 7. We'll try and keep it concise and.
No, it'll
I'm
start
sorry.
at 7.
Yeah, 7 to 8. So do a little bit of meeting beforehand. And does that give us enough time for any of the business?
The 6:30 to 7 will be feedback from you on what we present on the 21st. Any questions that we just polish it up before it goes in on the 11th.
Is that enough time?
Yeah, what time?
5:30 to 6:30.
Something comes out of the blue or something.
We'll meet after. Yep.
We can set up in the cafeteria, just a bigger space.
Yep.
Put together PowerPoints for that.
The real chairs, maybe? Yeah. We're meeting in the library,
Well, you don't want your knees up to your
I
chin.
must have it somewhere. Put it in my own agenda. In some ways, yeah, but my dad is about the most moderated person.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second. All in favor? Aye. Second.